Howdy folks, and welcome to my channel. My name is Daka Joe, and in this video I want to go over the magnificence that is Warhammer 40k. My main purpose today is maybe to inspire newcomers into diving into this wonderful fandom, and maybe remind some older players about how far our hobby has come. Now to start with 40k, we first need to explain the setting and its biggest players. Warhammer 40k is set within our universe in the 40th millennium. Constant strife between the most dominant forces in the galaxy feeds the dark gods of the Immaterium, who eagerly break into the physical world to satiate their dark desires. The grimdark future has no simple good versus evil narrative, as the air-quote good guys commit countless atrocities in order to keep the Imperium afloat, while other factions such as the Drukhari revel in sickening perversions. Really, 40k is a matter of perspectives and ideals clashing against each other in unending war. There are countless factions within the Warhammer 40k setting, each deserving of a solid video explaining who they are as well as their end goals. So very briefly, I would like to introduce you to just a small fraction of these peoples and how their actions shape such a fantastic hobby for our entertainment. Starting us off is the poster boys of Warhammer 40k, the Imperium of Mankind. The Imperium of Mankind is a galactic empire composed of billions of worlds. While all being protected under the watchful gaze of the Emperor of Mankind, his psychic presence alone enough to protect and guide the Imperium through the dark passages of the Warp or the Immaterium. He has stood for time immeasurable, and was even able to start a grand crusade to return humanity to its rightful place. However, a massive civil war took place called the Horus Heresy, sparking the downfall of one of the greatest galactic superpowers. Now the God Emperor of Mankind sits on his golden throne, a skeletal fragment kept alive for 10,000 years in order to provide a psychic beacon for space travel. In his stead, the massive Imperium of Mankind is led by bureaucratic simpletons, plagued with constant death, unending consumption, and endless war. The Imperium is most commonly recognized by the Adeptus Astartes, or Space Marines. These altered superhumans are the stalwart defenders of mankind, bent on carrying out the Emperor of Mankind's grand vision as he rots on his eternal golden throne. These grand legions of loyal sons of the Emperor are regarded as angels and holy retributors by the citizens of the Imperium. They are backed up by billions and billions of men and women, giving their lives in the constant struggle to protect the Imperium from dark threats. With holy zeal, these men and women of the Imperium fight a galactic struggle on all sides, desperately seeking to preserve the fragile safety that is broken every day. The Imperium of Mankind is a dying creature, desperately turning entire worlds into planetary hive factories rife with disease and corruption. Still, they press on, unable to be broken, while still crying out to their God Emperor. Next up, we have the Orcs, the Great Green Tide, feeding on war. Their only goal in life is to fight the biggest, baddest, and strongest creatures. To fight and shoot as much Daka as possible in every encounter with an enemy is the Orc code. Glorious combat filled with stick bombs, choppers, and big shooters elate these big boys to no end. They are constantly seeking out a good fight, and in a universe filled with never-ending war, these guys are constantly living the good life, no matter how gruesome a death they might suffer. Orcs are followers of the two orc gods, Gork and Mork. Gork, the extremely brutal and cunning, while Mork is extremely cunning and brutal. For us humans, we don't see a distinction, but as the Green Tide thinks, so it shall be. However, there is one thing that defines the orcs totally. The Wa. The Wa is a psychic field that all orcs and orchids can unconsciously tap into due to their physiology. Whenever a group of orcs come together, they generate this psychic field, so literal thoughts begin to warp the world around them. Unfortunately, since orcs are so mind-numbingly stupid, this leads to a hilarious series of events. Colors have meanings that can make explosions bigger or even make objects move faster. As a matter of fact, orcs literally piece together their machinery and then it just starts working because they believe that it will. It's absolute madness and it's absolutely fun. Orcs are normally led by the strongest and biggest orc boy, or the war boss. This kind of gives them the head of the snake effect, so typically enemies will try to eliminate the orc Wa leader, which is far more easier said than actually done. Moving on, we have the greatest known threat to the entire galaxy. The Great Devourer comes. The Tyranids are from another galaxy, far more deadly and dangerous than anything we have ever seen. They are a galactic hive mind, bent on consuming all and any forms of biomass. They use these components to fuel the hive fleets filled with deadly creatures resembling our worst nightmares. Not much is known about the inner workings of the Tyranids. However, they are evolutionary machines that can adapt to all types of known combat, even able to cancel out the warp or immaterium itself with just their presence. They are the shadow of the warp. While we have not currently seen what they all obey, the hive mind itself is a terrifying creature that could bring the entire galaxy to its knees if it so wished. Even the Imperium of Man, a xenophobic entity, has teamed up with other species just to beat back these monsters from another galaxy. Many lower lifeforms of the Tyranids are controlled by their psychic betters, which they themselves enforce the will of the hive mind. Eliminating these group leaders or even killing the queen of the hive fleets would make the Tyranids go berserk, rendering all of their tactics useless and they themselves almost dumbfounded. Unable to survive without their leaders, they become easy pickings for a well-organized formation. Many hive fleets are able to be differentiated by their colors and unique traits. These massive armadas have torn massive chunks out of the Imperium's grasp, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. Hive Fleet Leviathan itself almost wiped out the homeworld of the Space Marine Legion, the Blood Angels. Without the direct intervention of the Primarch Robute Guilliman, this beloved chapter would have faced total annihilation. Next, we have the forever cursed Necrons, their souls ripped from their bodies made from a deal many millions of years ago by their immortal Silent King. Now, they suffer inside almost indestructible metal bodies, their technology far more advanced and destructive than anything that technically regressive humans have. The Necrons are one of the few remaining species that have existed for time immeasurable. These millenniums they have slept on their tomb worlds, and now they finally awaken, bringing death and destruction to the inferior species of the galaxy to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. Many Necrons do not have much individuality, due to the fact that they have given way to the stagnation of immortality, and the edict from the betrayal of their Silent King. Though, that being said, all Necrons are desperate to return their souls to their bodies, to escape the damnation of eternity. Necrons are also an incredibly proud race, and would never accept total victory without the complete subjugation of the galaxy. Among the ancient species we have the Eldari, split in two by ideals and practices that shattered the species and their power. The Eldar and the Dark Eldar are polar opposites in how they conduct themselves, and even in war. The Eldari are what we akin to fantasy elves. Elongated ear tips, slender frames, and elegance are a few words that could be used to describe them. However, the Dark Eldar are anything but elegant in nature. Also called Drukhari, the Dark Eldar are slaves to the Chaos God Slaanesh, who constantly feeds on their souls for their immortal lives. To prevent Slaanesh from devouring their souls, the Drukhari commit acts of violence, sadism, and sexual deviancy to satiate the Dark God from consuming their soul. Their counterpart, the Craftworld Eldar, are a people who desperately seek to escape their souls from being devoured by Slaanesh. However, they refuse to give in to the dark temptations that birthed the god in the first place. They seek to break the chains that binds their souls. But doing so is an impossible task without first reviving their long-dead gods. The Craftworld Eldar are on the fringes of destruction, and must protect the original homeworlds while battling off all the damnations from their enemies. They use ancient psychic powers and destructive technology that rivals the Necrons. The only downside is that the Eldar are few in number and cannot hope to plug the tide of enemies at their door. To finally bring our list to a close, we have Chaos. Chaos can best be described as emotions and feelings given form. These combined emotions from all living things created these powerful gods, which now have sinister plots eager to destroy the galaxy, or save it, depending on your perspective. There are 4 Chaos gods: the Blood God Khorne, Grandfather Nurgle, the Changer of Ways Tzeentch, and finally the Prince of Pleasure Slaanesh. Together, these 4 warp entities could destroy all known life. But the gods of Chaos are mischievous and quick to betray their fellow gods on a whim. These gods would never destroy the known universe, as they love to play their great game, all the gods vying for power for all eternity. Each god has their own domain, and very rarely does Chaos come together to destroy their enemies. When Chaos joins, it is called Chaos Undivided, and nothing could stop their march through real space. Demons, hellspawns, and traitor space marines are of all variations live in the Immaterium, the real space separated by a thin veil that demons regularly emerge from to wreak havoc on entire sectors. The Imperium of Mankind is their hated foe, as the Emperor of Mankind rivals even their powers as a god. However, Mankind is besieged at all turns, and Chaos is eager to finally sink their fangs and deformed limbs into the skull of the corpse god. Should this ever happen, humanity itself would fall and a great protocol would be enabled by the Emperor. No one knows what will happen when it is enacted, but it is a source of debate in the community. Now, just to remind you, this is a very brief introduction to these fantastic factions, and I've not even begun to give you a look at the absolute glory of all these characters, places, and deeds. Many groups within these factions have been left out as well, just due for the sake of time. And honestly, I would love to give each of these groups a proper video explaining them as they are deserving. While we did just recently go over the basic setting and players, I would like now to give you a look at Games Workshop itself. Games Workshop is the owner and manufacturer of our beloved hobby, and its popularity is the reason that we have 30 plus years of lore for 40k. Games Workshop was originally founded in 1975 as a UK-based mail-order business importing popular fantasy role-playing and board games according to their site. However, it would be another 12 years before 40k saw the light. In September of 1987, the first edition of Warhammer was released, and with it, my favorite hobby took its first steps. For the next few decades, Games Workshop and 40k would continue to grow into a massive hobbyist revolution. Warhammer Fest, Warhammer World, and other conventions would pop off, showcasing some of the most talented cosplayers, miniature painters, and artists. While the physical side of media was popping off, so was the digital side. Dawn of War, Space Hulk Deathwing, and Warhammer 40k Space Marine were beloved video games that brought more and more people into the grim dark universe. Games Workshop also has its own publishing wing, which gives us the official canon lore, despite how much it gets rewritten, and gives us a deeper look into some of our favorite characters and factions. We as hobbyists get a deeper look into the psyche, trials, and tribulations of these characters, so it is always exciting or depressing depending on who you choose to follow along with in their journeys. Rip Tyranids for only having like 2 named characters. The Black Library has incredible authors who can fit in with the grim dark theme and are able to progress the storylines in a way that's exciting for most readers. The Grimdark also has a funny way of making you care for some of the silliest characters, namely the orcs, and taking them beyond seriously when they enter their wah. Now, this is the section of the video that I am most excited for. The Black Library, video games, and even miniatures cannot hold a candle to my burning love for the Warhammer community. I have never been so invested in a community like this, except for the furry community. But in all seriousness, this community is filled with some of the most talented people I have ever seen. I honestly wish there was more of an emphasis on the incredible works that come out of this fandom. Artists, animators, voice actors, writers, music artists, content creators, and hundreds of more people are taking their incredible skills and giving it the grim dark twist. I truly believe that Warhammer 40k has had such a huge resurgence in popularity due to the efforts of the people who have such an intense passion to create. I am also incredibly thankful to be living in a day and age where these people can make a living doing what they love to do most. You have lore creators who can be incredibly serious and deliver an incredible viewpoint that might be different to your own, or you can have someone who are basically responsible for 90% of the memes that come out of this fandom. Many of the creators have their own flair to give you these videos by, but some of my favorites involve people who add something to the Warhammer lore, creating their own stories that can generally vibe with the grimdark future. To really give newcomers a good start into getting into this hobby, I would like to recommend a few pieces of free media for you to enjoy as you dip your toes into my beloved hobby. On the Black Library main website, you can find free shorts giving a glimpse into many of the characters and different factions that might pique your interest. You also have the 40k timeline here, as well as plenty of community blogs to grab a hold of and see what events are coming in next. For more audio listeners, there are some fantastic lore YouTubers for 40k. If you prefer someone who's in more serious and has high quality voice acting, I would recommend Baltimore. His unique approach to lore and distinctive voice really make his videos worth giving a few listens to. Also in this section, I would say Luton is another fantastic look into the Warhammer 40k universe. And he also has already covered many of the topics, so you are pretty much guaranteed to find something related to the faction you intend to play. If you prefer something with more humor, I feel like MajorKill is probably your best bet when it comes to lore. MajorKill also has covered many 40k factions, and also has Warhammer Fantasy if you would prefer as well. We also have the pinnacle of 40k lore memes, Alfabusa. His entire team's voice acting, continuous story, and animation makes his channel my favorite when it comes to content creators. He also has podcasts should you prefer to listen to his Warham's game or the actual text-to-speech podcast. That is just pure bliss for me. All of these creators are fantastic at what they do, and they do not just give you the basic Wikipedia experience, that being that they just recycle whatever is written onto the page and then put it over HD backgrounds while you listen. Moving on, we also have an enormous amount of animations to go through, but to get the best experience, you need to watch the 5-part series Astartes. This is true Warhammer, and that channel also has another project in the works, so feel free to stay caught up with them. Warhammer 40k official animations are also pretty good, but they do come off as a bit more stylized, so it is really just up to viewer preference. There's also a shit ton of source filmmaker animations out there, so just dive in and have a good time with that. If you're looking for games, there aren't too many free games out there other than mobile. However, a lot of the games do go on sale quite often. Probably the best sale on anything Warhammer is Skulls for the Skull's Throne event. Fantasy and 40k games go on a ridiculous % sale, so it is definitely worth the buy. I would recommend getting Warhammer 40k Space Marine for action shooters, as well as Space Hulk Deathwing. Probably the most renowned and beloved game for 40k is Dawn of War 1 and 2. These games, while set in the same universe, play completely differently, so just be aware of that. They are at their core top-down strategy games, and both a shit ton of fun, especially with mods. I personally would not recommend Dawn of War 3, as the whole experience tried too hard to mimic the StarCraft esports wave, and it was just poorly done. That being said, if you have the money, getting the entire collection of all 3 games is worth it, and I do have a good time playing each of these games. If you prefer turn-based games, Sanctus Reach and Mechanicus, they slap. They're really good, and the soundtrack slaps. Really good. Well, I generally feel like this video went on for much longer than I expected, but I also hope that maybe I've piqued your interest into this wonderful hobby. No matter how grimdark the future might be, you will always be able to see the passion that goes into this hobby from these wonderful creators. I also hope that maybe I might be able to see something that you create in the future, should you decide to jump down the rabbit hole that is Warhammer 40k. Truly, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.